well, we'll see what happened. Let's go.
This courtesy of TMZ, saying the guy who allegedly attacked and stabbed Tory Lanez in prison is serving a life sentence for a murder charge, and this wasn't his first violent incident behind bars. The alleged attacker was identified by authorities as 42-year-old Santino Casio. Prison officials say he's serving a life sentence for second-degree murder and was previously convicted for an in-prison assault with a deadly weapon. So we're following the latest here on Live Now from Fox, and we're also learning more information about new evidence being brought forward in this case involving Tory Lanez. And we watched it here on Wednesday as the legal team sought justice in the case of Tory Lanez. They presented new evidence that suggests he never fired the weapon the night Megan Thee Stallion was shot in the Hollywood Hills. Lanez is currently serving a 10-year sentence for the shooting. The legal team alleges she lied about what happened the night she was lost. So let's take you right now out to some of these details here on Live Now from Fox from Los Angeles earlier on today about this new evidence being presented. We'll see if it has any legs in the courts. Let's listen into this here on Live Now.
Here, some really, really compelling new evidence that you've never heard before. Our legal team will explain all of that to you. We will have updates on Tory Lanez, Mr. Peterson, on how he's doing. It's really sad to see the situation that he's in, and we think it's time. Enough is enough. It's time to bring the brother home. So with that, I would like to bring up our lead consultant, Mr. Walter Roberts.
Good morning. We are here today to bring to your attention some information Unite the People believes is exculpatory in Mr. Daystar Peterson's case, professionally known as Tory Lanez. Recently, we've been made aware that a member of the media, Mr. Gianno Caldwell, was working on an op-ed for the New York Post regarding Mr. Peterson's innocence. During his work on that op-ed, he became aware of some information in Unite the People's possession regarding a statement that was given to Unite the People by someone with information relevant to that case. The New York Post recently reached out to the prior district attorney, George Gascon, Megan Pete and her representatives, and Kelsey Harris and her representatives. The only party that responded last week was Megan Pete's representatives with a request for more information. A few days later, Mr. Peterson's brutally attacked in his jail cell. Unite the People represents Daystar Peterson in his appellate process. We filed an appellate brief and a writ of habeas corpus on his behalf. The district attorney's office has already responded. The case is fully briefed. We're just waiting for the appellate court's decision. We were willing to wait for the appellate process to play out, but given that brutal, unprovoked attack, we felt it necessary to come here today to provide you with this information. It is our intention to make a request to the governor to either pardon or commute the sentence of Mr. Peterson, so that when he recovers from this attack, he's not returned to a jail cell, but that he's allowed to go home and recover. Not long ago, Unite the People was approached by a gentleman named Bradley James. Mr. James informed us he was working as the bodyguard and driver for Ms. Kelsey Harris during Mr. Peterson's trial. As such, he was in close proximity and he had privy to conversations she was having with her husband and others. Mr. James informed us he was not under a non-disclosure agreement or a confidentiality agreement and was free to speak with Unite the People, and that he was doing it because his conscience would not let him not speak and leave a man in prison for something he did not do. Mr. James informed Unite the People that he was a witness to the conversation Ms. Harris had, where she stated she had the gun, she fired it 3 times, Mr. Peterson grabbed her arm and knocked it down, and the gun fired 2 more times. In essence, Mr. Peterson never shot anybody, never even touched that gun, never fired the gun. This statement aligns with the statement of the only non-party witness to the case, Mr. Sean Kelly, who at trial testified he saw two women fighting, two men break up the fight, one man grabbed the other one's arm. Gunshots came from the passenger side. The passenger side is where Miss Harris was sitting. This further iterates that Mr. Peterson did not shoot Miss Pete, did not shoot at Miss Pete, or did not assault Miss Pete. It's just another irregularity in a list of irregularities in this case. For example, there were 3 potential suspects in the car that night, and yet the only DNA sample was taken of Mr. Peterson, even though unknown DNA was found on the gun. Why wasn't Miss Harris's DNA taken? Or was it taken and the information simply never given to the defense? Why wasn't the driver of the car, Mr. Jaquan Smith's DNA taken? Or was it taken and again, simply not given to the defense? We don't know. It should have been taken. It is Unite the People's understanding, regular LAPD practice at a crime scene like that, anybody who's there, the DNA is taken. Another irregularity. Why, at Miss Harris's police interview, was a non-lawyer, non-family member record company executive allowed to participate? A highly irregular situation. Normally, we see cases, strangers are not allowed in these things, but it was in this case. All of these things point to the highly irregular nature of his trial and his conviction. It is our contention that he was wrongly convicted. And while we at first were willing to let the process play out, it is our contention now that if he is not pardoned or released promptly, he may never come out. And that would be the ultimate injustice, is that he gets killed in prison for something he did not do. At this time, I'd like to bring up Mr. Gianno Caldwell, the media member who was working on that op-ed for the New York Post. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Good morning. Thank you for coming today. My name is Gianno Caldwell. That is spelled Gianno, Caldwell, Caldwell. I am the founder of the Caldwell Institute for Public Safety at caldwellinstitute.org. I am also a member of the press for almost a decade now. I've been looking into Daystar Peterson's case for almost 6 months now, professionally known as Tory Lanez. And after reviewing the evidence, the reporting, and the legal analysis, I've come to the conclusion that Tory Lanez was railroaded by the former district attorney, George Gascon. He was also wrongly convicted. I believe if Jesus Christ was Tory Lanez's attorney, George Gascon would do whatever in his power to ensure that Tory Lanez lost that case. Tory Lanez's defense team have alleged the withholding of exculpatory evidence, prosecutorial misconduct, among other issues that I was compelled to write an opinion piece for the New York Post. It is true that last week, the New York Post editors reached out to 3 parties, one being George Gascon, Megan Pete's team, and Kelsey Harris. It is also true that Megan's team was the only ones that responded back for that request for comment. I had some glaring questions, and that was the reason for this op-ed. Things didn't make any sense to me, many issues in this case, and I was shocked by the lack of interest from the media to ask very simple questions. There were multiple people with gunshot residue on their hands that night. Why didn't all individuals have the residue tested, their DNA tested on the weapon? That's a legitimate question. According to the prosecution, Tory was excluded from the clip of the gun. And according to Tory's defense team, they said DNA analysis showed that there was a 0.01% chance that Tory touched the actual gun itself. Another piece that stood out to me, the call that the prosecution alleged Tory made confessing to a crime. I listened to that call. I'm sure many of you have as well. I didn't hear a confession. But what really shocked me about it is if my best friend was shot maliciously by someone just 2 to 3 hours before, I wouldn't have answered the call, or if I did, I wouldn't calmly have a conversation with the individual of it. And certainly I would ask, why did you shoot my friend? And more importantly, I would never have given you my current location out of fear of you finishing the job. That was something that stood out to me. I also, in my op-ed, discussed Kelsey Harris pleading the Fifth Amendment. She wasn't accused of anything by Megan Pete or the police, and to my knowledge, she wasn't under any investigation. So why plead the Fifth? What also shocked me is the prosecution gave her immunity. For what? What did she do? Is there an allegation of her doing something? I'm not aware of that. Maybe some of you can answer that question today. During the time of trial, George Gascon, just to take you back to where we were at that particular point, he had just barely won a recall attempt. He lost support in many key demographics of voters. Crime was up in Los Angeles County. And this case would have been a silver bullet for him potentially winning. His policies obviously were bad and people were harmed. So that didn't happen, and thank God it didn't happen. At the heart of this injustice is the misuse of gun enhancement charges, a sentencing tool intended for the most dangerous and violent offenders. In Tory Lanez's case, these enhancements were not supported by evidence. But George Gascon, interestingly enough, who is someone who regularly would drop enhancements or not recommend them, chose to provide enhancements to Tory. And in his case, in any given situation, according to legal analysts I've spoken with, he would do 1 or 3 years if he did it without the enhancement. That's interesting. Why did George Gascon choose to pursue these enhancements? You know, there's cases I've been looking through which George Gascon has pursued, many in which he utilized these enhancements. A couple come to mind that I would like to reference here. One, Raymond Danger Gonzalez, a Mexican mafia gang member involved in a premeditated murder of 2 young men in 2017. Despite the brutality of the crime, Gascon didn't recommend enhancements. You premeditated murdered a teenager and another individual, brutal crime. Why would you recommend enhancements, but you would recommend them for Tory? That doesn't make a lot of sense. He also didn't pursue sentencing enhancements for the senseless murder of General Hospital actor Johnny Victor in Los Angeles in 2024. There's a lot of issues with this case. Many, I think, that the media should be pursuing all angles of it. We should not allow there to be unanswered questions. We should pursue open questions without fear or favor to anyone. That includes Mr. Tory Lanez. In his letter from the Birmingham jail, Dr. Martin Luther King wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If we take those words seriously, we must act when injustice is allowed to fester in plain sight." I founded the Caldwell Institute for Public Safety after my innocent teenage brother was murdered in Chicago on June 24, 2022. I stand firmly for public safety, for victims' rights, and for holding criminals accountable. But justice also demands that we protect the innocent and stand against politically motivated prosecutions. This is what I believe to happen here. When we imprison the innocent while violent offenders walk free, which is what George Gascon has often done, we undermine the very foundation of our legal system. Mr. Peterson was never given a fair trial, free from bias, political interference, and media-driven pressure. His continued incarceration erodes public trust and diverts focus from the real work of keeping our community safe. Further, while incarcerated, Mr. Peterson was recently stabbed in prison, as many of you know, a tragic incident that underscores the urgency of this situation and the risk to his life while this case remains unaddressed. Governor Newsom, I respectfully urge you to issue a pardon for Daystar Peterson, known as Tory Lanez, in a full and impartial review of his case. California must not be a state where justice is driven by headlines instead of evidence. And in the case of George Gascon, that was often the case. So I encourage everyone here to go to caldwellinstitute.org, CALDWELL, Institute, INSTITUTE.org, and sign the petition. This petition asks for the governor to pardon Tory Lanez. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I know there's a lot of noise in the media going on with other stories, but I think that this is one of the most important stories happening right now today regarding our Justice Department. My name is Diana London. I'm the CEO of the Secret Weapon Agency, which is a crisis communication firm, and I'm also the CEO of a company called London Global Strategies. I am a member of the media as well. I'm a commentator on a few networks, and I also serve as an advisor for Giano's Institute and also another company called Promising People that is fighting to reduce the recidivism rate in this country and also to correct our criminal justice laws. As a woman who has worked in Congress on criminal justice reform, I deeply believe in law and order. I've worked alongside law enforcement. I've drafted policy to reduce violent crime. I've seen what accountability should look like. But I also know the legal system without integrity is no justice at all. When we get it wrong, when our courts fail the people they're meant to protect, we don't just ruin lives. We erode trust in the rule of law itself. That's why I'm speaking out today for Daystar Peterson, better known to the world as Tory Lanez. This isn't about fame. It isn't about celebrity. It's about fairness. Tory Lanez doesn't want special treatment. He's demanding equal treatment. And if we Americans still believe in a system where guilty must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then we must admit this case raises serious concerns. Because the truth is, Tory Lanez is serving a 10-year sentence for a crime that evidence, which laid out here today, overwhelmingly suggests he did not commit. Let's go back to the night in question, just like Giano was just talking about in the attorneys. As the attorneys laid out here today, the prosecution failed to produce a single shred of forensic evidence tying Tory to the actual gun. His fingerprints weren't on it. His DNA was later found to be 100% nearly excluded from the gun, as shown in the worksheet that was provided to the defense late on the eve of the actual trial, after making a request for that very document. After trial, looking at this evidence, there is a 0.01% chance Tory's DNA was on the firearm. That's a difficult statistic to equate with the story as told by the prosecution, which may be why this was not present in trial. In fact, there were 3 people that night at the scene who tested positive for gunshot residues. One of those was Kelsey Harris, as Giano mentioned, the assistant to Megan Pete. According to multiple sworn testaments that you've heard today, including one from the bodyguard and driver with Harris on the 2 days of the trial, Harris admitted to firing the weapon during an emotional outburst. Tory intervened to de-escalate, not to harm. It is important to note, the police did not fingerprint anyone else who had gunshot residue on them that night, only Tory. Why? Even more troubling, the investigation itself was a disaster. Bullet fragments disappeared. The gun's serial number was sealed, a move that blocked the defense from investigating ownership. Police failed to follow standard procedures. Why? Didn't mark shell casings on the road and didn't test others involved that night with DNA. This wasn't justice. It was a rush to judgment. Worse still, the prosecution knew the case was thin. So what did they do? They tacked on gun enhancements, just like they spoke about. The charges, these gun enhancements are meant for gang shootouts and armed robberies to inflate the charges and turn a flimsy accusation into a decade-long prison sentence. Enhancements are a powerful tool against violent offenders, but using them in a case with no forensic evidence, murky testimony, and a defendant with no criminal history, that's very important to point out. He had no criminal history. That's not justice. That's a political stunt. Let's be blunt. This prosecution had everything to do with headlines and very little to do with truth. It was about symbolism, not substance. And that should concern every single one of you here today and in this country. Because when the facts take a back seat to identity, when due process is sacrificed for public spectacle, we all lose. Just yesterday, a Los Angeles court ruled the Menendez brothers, who brutally murdered their parents, are now eligible for parole after serving 35 years. They admitted to the crime. Tory Lanez, who killed no one and has still remained his innocent today, whose case is riddled with inconsistency.
Sorry.
The timing of these events raised disturbing questions to me, and I think they all should to you as well. After over 2 years in prison without incident, Tory was stabbed 14 times just days after a major national news outlet reached out to Megan Pete's team, Kelsey Harris, and former DA George Gascon about a story on new evidence in this case. You don't have to believe in conspiracies to see the pattern. When evidence was about to come to light, Tory was nearly killed. So let's stop pretending this is complicated. Let's stop treating this like some cultural war flashpoint. This is about a man, a father, a son, Daystar Peterson, who has sat in a prison cell for over a year based on a case that wouldn't pass the smell test in any honest courtroom. The prison system can no longer guarantee his safety, and that alone should be grounds for immediate action. But combine that with the overwhelming evidence of a botched investigation, and this becomes not just a legal issue, but a morale emergency. Tory Lanez deserves a new trial. He deserves due process. He deserves a pardon. And if justice still matters in America, he deserves to go home. So what now? What do we do now? We're all here today. We are calling on Governor Gavin Newsom, the California Attorney General, and the public at large to act. If you believe in due process, sign the petition now on the Caldwell Institute page that Gianna Caldwell mentioned at change.org. Let your voice be counted. Let the system know that we see what's happening and we won't stay silent. We can't be a nation that claims to value justice but looks the other way when a man is buried beneath the weight of political motivated prosecution. Dr. King said again, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This is that threat in modern day time. This is that moment. Daystar Peterson deserves to go home today. And we, the people, have a duty to bring him home. Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
And also give us a thumbs up, like, comment, share. Subscribe to the channel and you'll be notified of every video as they come up. And get that algorithm going and help us build this channel this year.
And make sure that you don't wind up in a what had happened situation. Boom, boom, boom.